I think we can open the meeting.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Jim. Open the meeting.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. We'll commence the meeting. It is 11:02. We'll have a quick roll call for purposes of documenting who's here. From a committee standpoint, let me say your name and please indicate your attendance. Supervisor Leggett.
Here.
Supervisor Merlino.
Here.
Supervisor Diamond.
Here.
Thank you. And from a staff standpoint, we have EDC President Jim Cipollone, myself, EDC Finance Leader Lisa Daly, and EDC and LDC Economic Coordinator Linda Oldenburg. First thing I want to do is I just want to, I guess, apologize for the confusion here. The transition in terms of managing these meetings, sometimes we learn every one of these meetings that our culture at the EDC may be different than the county's culture. So if I ever sent an audit and finance committee announcement out to my full board, they would just literally say, please stop sending me emails I don't need. So I apologize for extending and projecting that into the LDC world. If there's any members of the larger LDC board that would want to attend, we will make an effort to reach out to them and make this material available. And certainly going forward, we will copy them on any of these committee meetings so that they're aware of them. Just a cultural thing, I think. The other issue that I wanted to comment on is just the fact that communicating to the public is also a bit confused because I think they're quite used to receiving all this information on the county's announcements and websites. And as we've attempted to kind of disentangle the LDC from overt county administrative support, that may be something that is not, that the public isn't able to keep up. Now we're posting all of this to the LDC's website and to our own website, and we are noticing the press and the public when it's appropriate. But I still think there may be people who are confused if they're used to seeing this information on the county's website. So I'm going to take that up with Rachel and Christy just to make sure that maybe as a courtesy for a period of time, we continue to post it on the county's list of meetings as we kind of work through this.
Yep. Jim, if I may interject here with that, in the auditor's report, it succinctly states that the LDC is a function of Warren County. I'm trying to pull out on page 6 of the audit report. And yeah, for low Warren, well, maybe around there. But anyway, I'll let you get back to it. But I think we have enough reason to keep it.
Well, our goal is obviously not to reduce people's visibility into it, but simply to make sure that we're operating consistently with the direction that the county wants to operate in. And, this may be a thing where we're learning each month, but the primary goal of this meeting is to make sure that we bring the audited financials to you in a way that allows you to review them, make whatever you believe to be the appropriate recommendation to the board at large in an effort to ensure we can post the financials and annual report in accordance with the ABO and Paris filing requirements. And at this time of year for organizations like this is always a scramble because it typically takes until February to hand financials to an auditor. And then they have 30 days to complete those, work through any issues that they discover, and then we have a work product to share with you, usually with only a limited amount of time. So with that in mind, I'd like to have Lisa kind of walk us through the 23, obviously we're not going to go through all 23 pages, but I think there's a distinct way for us to highlight the most important things for you here, and then make sure that we're able to answer any questions as well. Lisa?
Okay, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for putting up with us, obviously, in our crazy meetings, as Jim said. So beginning with the independent auditors report, you will read that. You'll find that they did not have any findings. They, were given all the information they requested and everything that they chose to audit, for further deeper review. They did not find any, any missteps or inappropriate methods, procedures, et cetera, which is a great finding, of course. So if we move on, Linda, to the statement of financial position, which is also known as the balance sheet, you'll see here that we have $1,180,000 in cash and loans receivable. In 2019, you can see that it's down about a little under 100,000. And that was, basically due to expending cash. We gave out a couple of loans last year that were, one was over 100,000 and the other one was 12,000. So you can see that that kind of correlates. So the cash and cash equivalents are all of the bank accounts that we have, which is 3. We have 2 at Glens Falls National, 1 at TD Bank, and then the investment is the CD, and that's at $512,495. The initial purchase of the CD was for a year, and we do renew it every 90 days. That seems to give us the highest interest rate. So we've been renewing it every 90 days. We get an email from the bank, they inform us of the rates, and then we choose the duration based on the amount of interest that we can receive. Accounts receivable amount of $16,667. That was monies due from the county. So the LDC, as you know, bills the EDC bills the LDC for the monthly fee, and then the LDC turns around and bills the county for the same amount. So that was just money that I was waiting for them to remit to us, and typically it's 30 to 60 days, which is fine. Loans receivable are pretty self-explanatory. And then we have current liabilities, which is monies that were owed to EDC as of 12/31, and I wrote the check on January 6th. Any questions on the statement of financial position?
Yeah, Linda, my name is Jack Diamond. Just to clarify on your cash and cash equivalency, looks like we're down 136,871 from 2019 to 2020. Could you explain the reasoning behind that?
Well, we did issue a loan. What was the loan to Kirsch, Linda? Do you remember?
That was over 167,000, I believe it was.
Right. So that would be the majority of the difference. And additionally, we did not collect as much interest in 2020 due to COVID and putting the loans on a hiatus for 6 months. We did have some people who continued to pay. And then we had some people, when we did resume collecting, are not in a position to make a full payment and are doing interest only. So that would be my my analysis.
Okay, so let me understand that correctly. You loaned them 136,000, and we will be booking in the future loans receivable from that loan, correct?
Right.
So this was a new loan issued last year.
Right. So it increases receivables but decreases cash.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So from a financial standpoint, there are more total assets in the LDC than there were a year ago. However, from a cash standpoint, there's a little more than $100,000 less.
Yeah, I know. I see that, Jim. I was just curious about the cash assets, the current cash assets. The other question I have is your loan receivables of 2020 are up about 40,000 compared to 2019. Can you tell me what that receivable relates to? Is that monies that we are owed, or is that monies that we have collected?
That is monies that we are owed. So when the audit, so on our internal financial statements, we categorize the loans receivable on one line. when the auditors do a year-end financial statement, they break those loans receivable out into the current portion and then the long-term portion. So basically, add the 158,090 and the 713,176. That's our total loan portfolio.
Now, does that loan portfolio receivables reflect people that are behind, or is that because of new loans that we have approved in 2019 and 20?
That's all loans, including the ones that are delinquent.
So Supervisor Diamond, if you look at the loans receivable together with the loans receivable net of current portion, you'll get to $860,000, which is, more than it was by slightly less than $100,000 from last year.
Okay.
That's essentially a position that shows what the impact of the additional loans that we have lent are, net of the payments that have been made on the entire portfolio during that period of time.
Okay. Is this a fair question to ask at this time, Jim? How many loans we issued in 2020?
Two, always a fair question. It was a very low activity year. My current, speculation on that is because most businesses were seeking COVID-related relief as opposed to traditional loans during that period of time. Kirsch was by far the largest. We had one, decent sized loan, which was to Kirsch Helmets, and one very small loan to another small business in the community.
And how many applicants did we have for review?
Only a handful.
Okay.
Craig, you have a question?
Yeah, I do. The loans receivable is what we, is for the year, correct? That's what's expected for the year. And according to the chart that is on page something or other in the report, it lists it out through 2025. Is that correct?
So what?
Yes.
Loans
Yeah, go ahead,
receivable
Lisa.
current position is just for that year.
Well, I think the definition of current means those things that are listed as a receivable, but that you haven't received. Is that correct, Lisa?
Yes, yeah.
But it would be, let's see.
Let's see. I would have to-
Okay. Yeah, on loans receivable continued, page 9 and 10.
Right, so I'm sorry, I just found the page that you were referencing. So on the expected repayments, I'm on page 10 of the financial statement
Yeah.
document.
Yeah.
It says 2021 is 158,090, and then they estimate it for the next 5 years. And at the bottom, you see it comes out to 871,266.
Yeah. So, yeah, loans
So
receivable.
current, I believe, is just, not to correct you, Jim, but current is typically within 12 months. Yep.
Thank you, Lisa.
Oh, you're welcome. No problem. Any other questions on the balance sheet? Okay. So we move on to the statement of activities, which is basically your profit and loss statement if you were in private business. You'll see that we received the $10,000 payment from the EDC for purposes of the housing study. The housing study was expected to be done in 2020. However, due to COVID and some other things that came up, the Warren County Planning Department was not able to execute that. But we wanted the $10,000 to show on the EDC books so as not to cross over years. And so we made the contribution to the LDC. When the housing study is complete, the LDC will receive an invoice and those funds will be expended. Interest is just the interest that we received on the loans. You can see the significant difference between 2019 and 2020. And again, that was due to the COVID relief that we afforded the loan recipients. Program service fees. Let me see what that is. I believe that's income that we receive from SUNY Adirondack because we participate in the micro enterprise program.
Startup 80K, yeah.
Yep. And then obviously the Warren County support fee. which is via contract.
And that was forgiven in 2019.
Correct.
quarterly Report, so.
Yeah.
And that's why
Um,
things were restated, right? Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Moving down to expenses, obviously there's nothing in the housing study. Professional fees are the accounting fee by the outside audit firm that does the year-end audit. Marketing costs were costs that were newspaper ads that Ed had placed in regard to marketing the LDC loans and loan program. And you can see that's up a little bit. That's because we did some extra advertising regarding the COVID relief that we were offering. So we did a little bit of extra advertising on that. The service contract with Warren County, that is $50,000 is from is what we paid to the EDC, and $750 of that was paid to Sterling Appraisals for an appraisal that was done. And you can see that our net assets without donor restrictions is 1,702,500 versus 1,686 last year.
Linda, I got a question going back up to the revenues for the housing study. You mentioned that the county has not paid the EDC the $10,000. However, the EDC put up the $10,000 with the idea that the county would then reimburse them for the $10,000, correct?
Actually, the Warren County Planning Department is contracting with the service provider for that. So once that is, and they're actually, you know, heading up the survey, and basically the EDC and the LDC are just assisting with funding. So what will happen is when the planning department receives the invoice from the outside contractor, the LDC will be paying that invoice.
Okay, so I guess my question becomes, the county was going to contribute $10,000 to the housing study, correct?
Right, via the LDC, yes.
Right, and you've got down in your 2019 expense side that they've already paid 7,500 or $7,537 have been paid out already to the housing study. Who paid that?
Actually, that was not related to the housing study. That was related housing expenses that the LDC will occasionally help a homeowner if they have a, say their septic, you know, goes and they have a big expense, or they have a big roofing expense.
So it's something similar to a community development program where they assist homeowners that are low to moderate income with how do I want to put it, with needs and repairs that they're eligible for based on their being part of the community development block grant and eligibility because they're low in income. So it's not really part of the study. It's more of a program to assist people with homeowners repairs.
Correct.
Yeah, so it can be confusing. It confused me too, Supervisor Diamond. The original charter for the LDC, which goes back many years, has as one of its two elements, community housing support because of the nature of the grant. So it continues to be an ongoing legacy responsibility of the LDC, although the proportion of resources that we expend relative to the loans is very small. In this particular case, due to gap accounting, they group those because they're all viewed as housing related expenses on another financial statement other than this. So you can occasionally see these as being commingled, but the study is completely separate from the community housing support.
And I think that's a good program that the LDC offers, Warren County's Local Development Corporation, to assist low income and moderate income people for home repairs on, you know, that pop up on different occasions. I think it's a good program.
Especially on the septic side, I think it's something that we should consider whether or not putting more of that money to work would serve the county's greater objectives. And that's something that we can consider with the larger board about marketing that more actively.
Thank you.
There being no further questions on that, we'll move down to the statement of cash flows, which basically is a reflection, a cumulative reflection of what occurred during the year as far as flows in and flows out. So you can see that the accounts receivable was increased by 16, well, decreased, I'm sorry, by 16,667, and that was again the receivable that was owed to us from the county. And at the end of 2019, there was actually a receivable of 21,488. So, and then accounts payable, obviously, that's the payments to the EDC. Let's see. The purchase of investment in the certificate of deposit, the 2209 was interest that the CD received. The majority of the interest was reflected in the 2019 financial statements, even though the CD didn't expire until February of 2020. From an audit standpoint, they have to record what was earned in that time period. So the 2209 is actually what was earned in 2020, net of what was earned in from February of 19 to December of 19. We obviously issued a couple loans. That was Kirsch and the small business in Lake George. And then we have the repayment of loans receivable. And again, you can see the difference in that. Also in 2019, I believe that a couple of loans were.
Lisa,
Yes,
can we hold a minute? Craig, you have a question?
sorry.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there's a typo on page 8 where under paragraph 3, concentration of credit risk, on the last paragraph under 3, it has 2021. And I bet that they meant to say 20. Yeah, right there. I'm pointing on my screen.
Yes.
I can see your finger.
Yes, it's definitely a typo. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
No problem.
We need to record that, you guys, and make sure that whatever we send out for the full board is reflective of that change.
All right. I will notify the auditor.
Although I think the auditor in the clean copy can take care of that as well.
Right, right.
That was eagle eyes.
Yes.
Well done.
Pages ahead of us.
So going through the notes in the financial statements, the majority of them are very similar, you know, to what they've been in the past because our nature of activities really doesn't change. Obviously, if something changed, it would get added to that portion. I'm just
I think there is one we want to go through though in some detail.
Yes, yeah, I'm just kind of reading through the others to see if they needed any. A lot of them are just standard audit speak, as you might say.
Linda, I've got a question again on page 5.
Okay.
In 2019, our cash and cash equivalent was about 894,321. And at the end of 2020, it's 492,963. That's about almost a $400,000 difference in cash.
So
Is that alarming to you? And my second question would be to Jim is, what's our plan to prevent this loss in cash flow in 2021?
I think
That's significant amount of money.
Yeah, may I interrupt 1 second? The 894,321 was the cash at 1/1/19. 629,834 was the cash balance at 1/1/20.
Okay.
Yeah.
So cash
120, yeah.
cash flows can sometimes be a misleading thing, Supervisor Diamond. They're a snapshot in time that are designed to show you what your cash position is to be able to meet current obligations. And so that is, if you really want to understand what you would consider to be your true liquid assets, you go back to the balance sheet and look at what that cash and cash equivalent is. Can you do that real quick, Linda? So when Lisa was, Lisa, maybe I'm talking out of turn here. Maybe you should explain where the actual liquid asset balance is that is appropriate for him to look at.
Yeah, it's $180, 182,550. No, I'm sorry. I was adding some things up. It switched. Go ahead.
No.
So the total liquid assets would be cash and cash equivalents, which is 492,963 and 512,495.
So the important thing to understand, Supervisor Diamond, is the vast majority of the cash in the organization is set up in a long-term investment, which is this annual CD. More than $500,000 sits there and continues to sit there. So what we would consider to be the liquid, call it loanable cash, moved from 629 to 492, or down essentially $140,000. But that's also based on us giving out $180,000 worth of loans. So the point is that even when we pushed $180,000 out into the community, our cash position went down by less than that because of the other sources of income, including interest. We still have nearly $500,000 in what I would consider to be ready to loan funds. We have an additional $500,000 in what are more strategic funds that would be available to us if we ended that CD and put those funds to work. Together, that's $1 million worth of cash that is available to the community in consistent with the loan programs and financial programs the LDC has.
Oh, I understand that. I was just looking at these numbers, a comparison from, the 2019 at the beginning of the year and the end of the year of 2020.
Well, so it went down by $130,000 roughly in a year where we pushed out 180,000. And so,
Well, it looks, these numbers, I'm looking at 894, 321. It says cash and equivalent at the beginning of the year of 2019. That would be January 1st, 2019. And at the end of 2020, which would, let's say, hypothetically speaking, January 1st, 2020, the difference in cash and equivalent at the end of the year was 492. That's almost $400,000 difference.
you're
put out a loan for.
you're comparing two different things there, Supervisor Diamond. The cash equivalents in the 894 is not equivalent to the 492. Lisa, can you help me here?
So the way I would explain it is, so during the calendar year 2019, the cash and cash equivalents went from 894,000 to 629. Then when we started 2020, we started with 629 and we ended up at 492.
Correct.
If we were to go back and look at 2019, you will see that the difference between the 894 and the 629 is made up of the loans we pushed out in that period of time. The difference between the 629 and the 492 is primarily based on the $180,000 worth of loans that we pushed out in the past 12 months.
I agree what you're saying, Jim and Linda. I guess maybe you don't understand my question though. But anyways, we can move on.
Well, I think this is an important point because my view here is that these are funds that are available to be lent, and they're either in the loan portfolio or they're sitting in the bank. But if they're in one place or the other, they're essentially assets available to us to work.
Okay.
Craig, you have a question?
Right. If you go up there to net cash used in investing activities, those are negative numbers. And I think that's what's significant, what Jim and Lisa are saying. No, you had it there. Sorry, Lisa. It was 1, 2, 3. Right there. So that's what you get, from various activities. And a lot of that, you can see loan issued is 180,013. And that reduced it this year. Last year, what reduced it was going into a purchase of a CD, $510,000. So that really decreased net cash used in investing activities. So, yeah.
I want to provide you with good counsel here. if an outsider, not just our auditor, but let's say an outsider who would be evaluating our program came to give us advice, what they would say is, it's important for me to communicate to you that you continue to have $1 million between the bank and your liquid assets. You have $1 million that you could potentially put to work right now that is not in loans. And that's essentially the same position you were at last year. Very, very little difference between the two. Where that sits between the bank and what we would consider to be the other liquid assets is what has differed in the 2 years.
Okay.
I think there is an important point we want to make though in the notes. Lisa, do you want to scroll down to there?
Linda, we'll scroll down. Yep.
Sorry, I was actually looking for Lisa to make the explanation, and once she finds it, then she'll tell you what page to go to. I think it's on 9 or 10, Lisa.
The fair value measurements.
Okay, on page 10, note number 7, the restatement of 2019. That was basically an adjustment that needed to be made to square up 2019. The original statements had reflected a $50,000 receivable from Warren County. But as we know, that Warren County did not fund the LDC in 2019. Certainly Jim has more information about that and how that worked. So basically what we needed to do was just restate the amount of net assets on the 2019 financial statement.
Let me speak. I want to speak clearly to everybody here, because one of the challenges when you step in to a role like this is that you inherit, whatever it is that was there when you got there, but you didn't necessarily, weren't party to it. I was not a part of this organization. I was on the board of the EDC, but not of the LDC in 2019. There was a decision made in 2019 to forego the traditional $50,000 funding from the county. It's well documented. It's in all the minutes. It's been reviewed with the county's attorney. What happened in the financials of the LDC, though, is for some reason, the direction that was given by the management of the EDC at the time was to continue to hold that as a receivable on the LDC's books. I don't know if that was a mistake or whether there was an intention by Ed to go back and try to get those funds despite the decision that was made publicly not to provide them. But when I came in, I asked everyone to help me find anything like this that was unresolved and bring it as quickly as we could to the group so that everyone was aware. Essentially, we're shaking the tree together to make sure that if there's anything there that needs to be cleaned up. Unfortunately, Ed's not here to explain what he was thinking, there's never something that Ed did that there wasn't a process for. But I have to rectify the financials because we're not going to go back and ask the county to restore that funding. That decision was made 2 years ago, and now the financials need to reflect that. Does this make sense?
Yes, yeah, you're 100% right. That was a problem. Some of the board members were concerned that we were giving EDC too much money, even though they had bank statements with a lot of money in the bank. And that's why I think they passed that. But you're 100% right. But Ed wanted to leave it in there, hoping he can persuade some of the supervisors to change their mind the following year. So
my goal is, as you guys know from just participating in the meetings, is for us to go make good decisions together based on a clean sheet, as close as we can get. So I want to aggressively deal with any of the long-term monies that are owed. We've been talking about that in the regular meetings, and any accounting issues where we've been carrying them for some period of time. I want to make a decision and resolve them. And in this particular case, we have to restate the 2019 statements for the LDC to reflect that that money was not received and it will not be received. This may come up, by the way, in some public comment about the LDC. That's why I wanted to bring your attention to it. It's intentional that we resolve this instead of carry this.
Appropriately so.
Lisa, are there other notes that you feel like are of importance?
Not really. I mean, I kind of looked through. And I think the rest of the notes are just, you know, the typical explanation that they provide each year in the financial statements. And the last page, of course, is the independent auditors report, which they will put a date in the first paragraph once we tell them that the Audit and Finance Committee has approved the statements. They did not find any deficiencies in internal controls, et cetera. And so it was a positive auditor's report from that standpoint.
So there are three things that would be posted at the same time here: the audited financials, if they are indeed approved by you and then the larger board, the letter that you see here that would accompany that from the auditor, and then the annual report, which is essentially just a template that captures this activity that shows the total number of loans that were dispersed and the other activity for the group during that period of time. It was very low last year. I think you guys mentioned it before. 2 loans last year for a total of $180,000. There was 1 loan applicant that did not make it through the process. And so that information would accompany those financials when we post to Paris, if indeed these are approved for posting.
Yeah. Jim, on page 14, which is a part of the independent auditors report, there, I thought it was very comforting to see under their heading of compliance and other matters, on their last sentence there, the results of our test disclose no instances of non-compliance or other matters that are required to be reported under the government auditing standards. And they have their test sheet in here as well. Just want to thank everybody in the EDC office for taking such good care of the LDC books and following up with everything that needs to be done.
Well, I appreciate that. And Lisa is the one responsible for that. It was I think it's been quite a responsibility to take over for not only the loss of Ed, but Jennifer Switzer. The two of them together were here for, you know, much of the life of this LDC. And I know how daunting it was for me to step in and pick all this up kind of midstream. But Lisa has kept all of this above the fray. We have never dipped into a place where there was a question about compliant practices. And in fact, we found some things that we could clean up. I feel like this is the kind of behavior we want, and very much appreciative of the support that she and Linda have been able to provide. The diligence that they provide, I think we are well served. Linda is in touch with loan recipients and the county's attorney's office every 2 weeks. The amount of dialogue that we're having with the community is richer and deeper than it has been in the past. And it's our goal to ensure it stays that way.
Thank you.
Jim, just one final question. I did read the comments, and I think that, you know, you've done a good job as far as maintaining the financials of the LDC. Do you have a copy of the 2019 audit at your office? And if so, could I pick up a copy of that?
Certainly, we'll get that to you. It's
Okay.
awesome.
If you
All
just
of
leave
this-
it at your front desk, I can just swing over there and pick it up somewhere.
Yeah, we'll print one out for you. And any of you that want that, we're happy to provide that. And we also make those materials available on the website, although we're about to talk about that as another topic when we get through this.
Okay, thank you.
Well, so if you are, if all of your questions have been satisfied, I think the remaining action associated with this agenda item is simply to determine whether you feel comfortable recommending the approval of these financials to the larger board.
I make a motion to recommend the approval of the audited report as presented with the typographical corrections.
Correction, yep.
And I'll second that, Gene Merlino.
Supervisor Leggett made the motion. Supervisor Merlino seconded it. Roll call vote. Supervisor Leggett,
Yes.
Supervisor Merlino,
Yes.
Supervisor Diamond.
Yes.
The motion's carried. Thank you all for that. I wanted to quickly cover another topic for you simply because we had you here, and it's an important thing that we've been working on along the side. Linda, yeah, thank you. The second item on the agenda is I want to alert you to the fact that we will have some website and Zoom expenses that were not planned as a part of the ongoing work that we're doing with the county to rationalize the management and administration of the LDC. So as many of you probably know, until very recently, all of the administration in terms of noticing the meetings and maintaining the website and all of the communications was on a county website. In fact, it still exists. But the intent, I believe, is for the EDC to take that on, which we are happy to do. However, we did not budget for that, which means that I now have to go get the web developer that we work with to create a secure website that will accompany the EDC's website. It will be unique, but it will follow the same construct in that it has the same protections for a public entity like this. We have a quote for roughly $6,000 from the entity that does that work. And so that, to the extent that we agree that that's the right process to take, those expenses would flow through the LDC in a way that they were not in the prior year. Once we do that, that $6,000 is not an ongoing cost. It's a one-time cost to construct that to the secure standard that is required. At that point, it would just be part of our ongoing maintenance responsibilities to the county. In the same way, we have Zoom costs associated with administering these meetings, which used to be borne by the county's IT group. And of course, I just went through this in what I wish were less detail with not only Chairwoman Sieber, but others, because I think it's confusing to people. And so we're not only going to need to put in the same kind of Zoom infrastructure that will allow us to record and store all our meetings, but we're probably going to have to spend some time with some duplicative communications to make sure that people are confused as to where to find these things, are able to find what they are looking for. In other words, we may have to spend some time on marketing and connecting some of these sites. So it used to be that all of the LDC meetings were on the county's Zoom YouTube page. They won't be going forward unless we create that linkage so that somebody from the county site can connect to where they're actually being stored on the EDC's infrastructure. And I don't think those expenses will be significant. I think we're probably talking about something like $1,000 to $2,000 for the Zoom piece and roughly $6,000 for the web piece. But I did want to alert you to it. And if you have concerns or you think this is not necessarily the right thing, I want to make sure that I get an opportunity to hear from you before we begin to execute on this.
Jim, could you just refresh my memory on why we chose to go in a different direction with this?
So I do not want to speak for Chairwoman Sieber, but I will attempt to paraphrase what I believe to be the direction, which was when she stepped in, there were a number of things that she felt were either inappropriate or in some cases literally the wrong way to do things, maybe even illegal on the county side. And so one of those was that there was a perception that the Warren County LDC as a entity that is its own financial institution should not have its administration be done or supported by county employees, that there was some risk associated with the idea that the county was subsidizing that. And so the EDC manages this administratively. We were just not managing it from a web standpoint or a communication standpoint. So those additional responsibilities were asked to be taken on by the EDC. Of course, this is after the point at which we had made agreement. Happy to do it. There's no question about our willingness to do whatever is required. I only want to alert you to the fact that there may be things in next year's financials which are uniquely connected to this that we didn't plan for.
Thank you.
Yes, Supervisor Liggett.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. You know, again, going back to that sentence on page 6 of the report, the corporation, the LDC, is a component unit of Warren County and is included as such in the county's financial statements. So the LDC is the county. It is an operation of the county. We contract with the EDC to take care of the administration of it and to do outreach. And for that, we pay the EDC $50,000 a year. But as far as, I would like to see the meetings and all still be taken care of through the county and the county's website as they have been done, because that allows a greater accessibility and transparency for all the constituents, because the Warren County website, especially the way it's designed now, it's very easy to access all of those records and videos and things like that. Whereas, how would I know to go to whatever website the EDC might set up for the LDC and so on? Those are just my initial thoughts.
I appreciate your comments, and this is why I brought it to you. I want to make sure we don't execute on something unless there is consensus that it's the right direction to go. And it's very important that you understand that we are not advocating in any way to do this. We're simply trying to respond to what we believe we're being asked. I think it's certainly worth considering tabling this for the next full meeting after the annual meeting for discussion of the larger LDC, and would give us an opportunity to engage with Chairwoman Seaver as the sole member to ensure that, knowing what we know now, would we still think this is the right thing to do? If it is, I want you to hear me clearly, we will do whatever we are asked to do. But it's important that, particularly for people in the community that think that the EDC is somehow attempting to exert control or more management over this, that is not our intent. Our intent is to do whatever it is that we are asked.
Thank you.
So for now, what I'm hearing is that it may be appropriate for us to wait on the execution of those until we could have a larger discussion with the entire board. Is that a fair assessment?
Jim,
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't
good
think
with
you were
it.
looking to take any action on this today, but there's
No, I
no
simply-
harm to bring this to the full board to discuss.
But I did want you to understand that the confusion that went in, like the flurry of calls that I had this morning about who knew about this meeting and how, as long as we're in this limbo state, we will continue to have that. So I would love to have the conversation as quickly as we could, perhaps as soon as the next full board meeting after the annual meeting.
Yeah, we can put that on the next full board if that's the pleasure of the chairperson. Yeah.
Well, with that, and by the way, she's showing you, Linda's showing you what we have in terms of a quote to do this work. It's primarily about creating, as I said, the secure infrastructure around this site. Ongoing, the cost for us to support it would only be $750, but that would be something that we would, bundle in with whatever support requests we made in the coming years if we were to do this. I'm happy. I'll bring this to the meeting when we have the conversation with the larger board.
Yeah. Hey, I just pulled up the Warren County Board of Supervisors, March, April 2021 meeting schedule, and they have Inter-County Legislative Committee of the Adirondacks on there. And I'm wondering if there's IDA meetings. I can't pull up another one, but I always found it very helpful to have on our Board of Supervisors calendar, LDC meeting, because supervisors sit on that, and that's the calendar we look at. And
Yeah, I don't want to beat this to death, but when I was talking to Chairwoman Seaver this morning, she suggested that we provide a copy to the county, which we're happy to do, and to make sure we're communicating through Christie and communicating out to the full Board of Supervisors. While I'm happy to do that, at some point we're replicating the exact process that was already in place. And so I think we should be conscious about whether we're actually doing what we think we're doing. And the goal to me is to make sure that this is, number one, run professionally and appropriately, and number two, that the public is well served. And we are not in any way advocating that us having a greater role in the technical management of this is required to do those things, but we will follow the direction that we are providing.
thank you.
So can we go back to the agenda real quick, Linda? So I want to make sure before we adjourn that everyone understands the next set of events. So now that you guys have approved for the full board the financials, we will send those to the full board in advance of the annual meeting next week. The annual meeting will not only approve those financials, hopefully for posting to Paris by the 31st, but that will also be the point at which officers of the board are made for the assignment of officer roles for the board are made for the coming year. And any other annual business, which would include any changes in the bylaws, although we are not recommending any. If there were to be any, that would be a place where they would be addressed. So the next meeting that we have is, I believe it's Tuesday, March 30th, which is the annual meeting at 11:30. And so the full board will meet. You'll make your recommendation from a committee standpoint that the financials be approved by the full board. And then post that decision, there will be a discussion about officers of the board and any other changes to the governance or bylaws of the organization. And I believe that's the full agenda of the annual meeting. Is that correct, Linda?
Yes, it is. Everything will be attached to the Zoom that I send out later today. All the documents and everything that you're going to need for the meeting on Tuesday.
Thank you.
So before we adjourn, I want to make sure we covered a lot of ground here, and it's not always, this is my first time with you guys in this committee. Are there other things that we haven't addressed that you either want to address now or you'd like to note?
I'd just like to say that I feel really calm watching those palm trees flow in the wind and waves at the shore.
Thank you. That's my motivation to get through tax season, so.
So.
Well, I would also remind you that we're in the midst of a state controller's audit. Lisa, Linda, and I have met with them certainly every week for the last several weeks. I was on the phone with the auditor again this morning. I believe that they're probably coming to closure. I would expect that they will meet with us in the next 2 weeks to share with us their initial findings. I would be surprised if there are not some. We have been apprised by our auditors that that is the standard practice. They recently went through this exact same process in Washington County with the LDC there. There were a handful of minor administrative findings. I expect that is what they're paid to do. Unlike a auditor who you pay to do the work, a state auditor is there to ensure that they're highlighting things that they consider to be important areas of emphasis, and oftentimes that means a minor finding. But obviously we will share with you whatever comes out of that. But nothing of alarm or note has been discovered thus far. Would you say that as well, Lisa?
Yes, I would.
But I would expect that the closure on that will occur after the annual meeting and will probably be hopefully in time for our next full meeting. So with that, I believe we've exhausted all the business and would certainly entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that. Supervisor Merlino.
I'll second it. Jack,
Supervisor Diamond, all in favor?
aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Linda.
You're welcome.
Very welcome.